If you could spend a moment with some remarkable people and discover what their life sounds like, what would you ask? Welcome to Are We On Air? An audio encounter. I'm Armand Nafei, and each episode will feature one conversation with an inspiring friend of mine who will share with us the soundtrack to their life. So welcome back to another episode of Are We On Air? I'm here with the wonderful and talented artist that is David Shrigley. Welcome, David.
Hello, thank you for having me.
I don't know if you remember this. I just now, while I was preparing for our little chat, I just remembered that we did an interview years ago at the Serpentine Gallery. This must be at least, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago. There was the knitwear, the Scottish knitwear brand Pringle did a collaboration with you.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, it was you and Ryan McGinley and Tilda Swinton and so forth. And I did an interview for Interview magazine, which I don't know how I got that gig, but here we are. So this is our second round, so to say, but this time we talk about music.
Right. Well, I'm more on my subject now. I'm not, fancy sweaters and the world of fashion. I was a bit off, probably a bit off message when we did that interview.
Yeah. Well, to kind of give you an idea of what Are We On Air is, it's basically I'm asking you a couple of questions about your life and your work, but through a couple of songs to kind of understand who you are, what you do, and just kind of get an idea what you're listening to. To begin with, what's your earliest significant musical memory that shaped you as an artist?
I don't know. It's hard to say what shaped me as an artist. I've always had a kind of a soundtrack to my life, and I've always became very excited about music. Maybe when I was 11 or 12, I guess that was my musical awakening. And, I was really into pop music. This would have been 1980, 81. And my first, I kind of remember pop music before then. There was a band in England called T-Rex, Mark Bolan, who you'll know about. But I always, whenever anybody asked me what my favorite band was, I would always say T-Rex when I was a little kid, because I was really into dinosaurs. And obviously the T-Rex is the best dinosaur. So I would always say T-Rex. And so oddly, I don't think I knew what T-Rex sounded like, the band. But oddly, sort of later on, I got to listen to T-Rex when I was a teenager, and I still really like T-Rex. So that's sort of an odd coincidence. Mm-hmm. But I guess my first musical memory was Adam and the Ants. They were my favorite band, and this would have been the era of their maybe their second record, which was when they became kind of a pop band rather than a punk band, which was called Kings of the Wild Frontier. And Adam Ant was one of my first musical hero. So yeah, those first two Adam and the Ants records, which were Dirk Wears White Socks and Kings of the Wild Frontier, they were probably the first two LPs that I bought. It was all vinyl in those days. And they're still probably still records that I could still listen to and enjoy. They kind of meant a lot to me at the time. And I think that it was around that time that I looked at record sleeves, and because 12-inch vinyl, was the artwork was really important for those things. It became less so and has become less so, I suppose, with digital. But I imagined that somebody had to design record covers, somebody had to make the pictures to go on record covers, and I figured I could do that. I thought that was what an artist did, in my vague understanding of what art was and what artists did all day. So I remember listening to Dirk Wears White Socks, which was the first Adam and the Ants record, and imagining that each track was a kind of 7-inch single, 7-inch vinyl, and then designing a sleeve cover for the 7-inch vinyl. So I did that. I mean, I wish I had them. Unfortunately, my mother just threw away all my artwork when I left home many years ago. But I have a memory of doing that, and I remember thinking about what art was and what artists did. So I guess in my mind, music and art were very, were two sides of the same coin. There was music and there was art, and art somehow needed music and music needed art for marketing purposes. So yeah, interesting that, the way my career has turned out, in that, I've done a lot of record sleeves and made my own music and stuff. So it's followed that path. But I think looking back, it was actually something that was my understanding of art and music, that they were, symbiotic somehow.
Definitely. Even today, when you go record shopping and digging through crates, if you don't know the title, if you don't know the artist or the music, the sleeve gives you so much information that it intrigues you. And in most cases, it should be as good as the record itself, where you're like, okay, I'm going to listen to this because it speaks to me visually. And obviously with the streaming and downloading music, of course, that art is gone, but there's, of course, a beautiful revival of vinyl records.
Yeah, certainly.
So maybe you can go back?
Well, I'm separate. Where I am right now is I'm separated from my record collection. I'm in my house in Devon, and my record collection is in Brighton. But hopefully, in the coming months, we will be reunited.
Do you have a track from Adam and the Ant from that period that stuck with you?
Yeah. I think Car Trouble Part 2 technically was the single actually from Dirt Wears White Socks. I don't know if I think I've got that single somewhere, but it wasn't one that I felt the need to design a record cover for. So yeah, probably Car Trouble Part 2. Car Trouble is it's sort of an odd, there's Car Trouble parts 1 and 2, and they kind of segue into one another. It was sort of had a slightly prog rock element to it, in that maybe the single had a very, very long introduction, but for the purposes of 7-inch singles and radio play, it was Car Trouble Part 2 was the one that sort of captured my imagination. But it's quite a left field album, Dirt Wears White Socks, and that's probably the most punk rock song on it that sounds like a kind of a pop punk band. So I'd probably go with that one.
If you would have to describe yourself in terms of who you are, could you choose 3 records or 3 songs that define who David Shrigley is?
Well, I suppose it's different from asking me what my favourite records are, in a way, although maybe there's some crossover. But things that, when you're on Spotify, I don't know if you've made music, but when you're on Spotify, you can check out what music is fans of you, what other fans like, so what you're synonymous with, and I've done that obviously because I'm a recent convert to Spotify since lockdown, actually, oddly. So I had a look, and Ivor Cutler. Do you know who Ivor Cutler is? Scottish. Well, no. Yeah, he's sort of kind of an outsider national treasure in the UK. He's originally from Glasgow, was an artist and a performer, and made some records in the late 60s, early 70s. He had a really strange, various career. He used to be a teacher of English and then became sort of successful later in life after he'd had a career as a teacher. He was in the movie Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. So he was kind of hanging around swinging London, I guess, in the late 60s. And I think his first record was made in maybe '69, and then he released a couple of albums on Virgin, the early Virgin label, when Richard Branson was still cool. And and then he released a lot of books. He did performances, but it's sort of a lot of spoken word type things. But also he was quite musical as well. He used to play the harmonium, which, if you know what that is, I think it's one of those things that was probably used on some prog rock records like Noi and Can or something. But traditionally it's like a keyboard with a sort of wind instrument, so it's a bit like an accordion, but it's played, it's a flat keyboard that's played like a piano. Anyway, deeply kind of very funny, very straight, odd and eccentric, kind of, like a Scottish eccentric. So I guess because of Spotify, I guess I would say that I am apparently my music is akin to his. But I do really,
Well, that's a compliment by Spotify.
I think it is, yeah. I mean, I think his musical accomplishments are much greater than mine, but he's, somebody who I really admired when I was at art school, because it's the kind of albums that you would play after you'd been to the bar and you get stoned and then go home and listen to an Ivor Cutler record. It was very funny. It's very funny music. I guess if I was going to choose one Ivor Cutler track, it would probably be, there's a track called Cock-a-Doodle Don't, which is from his first record, which is he's probably got 3 or 4 signature tunes, and that's one. But yeah, it probably sums it up. If you're just going to listen to one, just get a feel of it, listen to that one. It's very, very funny.
Yellow shoe had started singing cock-a-doodle-dum, ba-dum-ba-dum-ba-dum-ba-dum-dum.
1, 2, 3.
I saw Santa in the chimney sitting on a pile of soot and singing cock-a-doodle-doo. I threw my little yellow shoe, he started singing cock-a-doodle-dum, ba-dum-ba-dum-ba-dum-ba-dum-dum.
1, 2, 3.
I saw an elephant at the bus stop leaning on a young man's leg and singing cock-a-doodle-doo. I threw my little yellow shoe, he started singing cock-a-doodle-dum, ba-dum-ba-dum-ba-dum-ba-dum-dum.
1, 2, 3.
I saw my granny at the pictures biting all the buttons off the seats and singing cock-a-doodle-doo. I threw my little yellow shoe, she started singing cock-a-doodle-dum.
Probably also The Fall are a band that I've kind of loved for my entire life, really. I sort of had a strange introduction to their music, in that when I was in the late 70s, when I was just sort of becoming aware what music was, I remember seeing their first album in the record shop, which is called Live at the Witch Trials. And it's sort of quite a slightly folk art, primitive, slightly sinister looking cover of some maybe post-apocalyptic landscape with a lifeless tree in a wasteland. And this, for some reason, this sort of really appealed to me as I don't know how old I was, 9 or 10 when I first saw it. And I thought it was really interesting art. I thought it was like, I don't know, surrealism or something. And I remember I had a badge, a little lapel badge that I bought or acquired somehow that had an image of The Fall. And I didn't really know much about The Fall's music. Maybe I'd heard it or maybe not, I don't know. But it wasn't until a number of years later that I actually got really into The Fall and became a fan, I suppose, and remained a fan until now. I guess The Fall are no more. But yeah, so maybe that first record, a track from that first record. I think I always thought that The Fall were the most punk rock band in my latter understanding of what punk rock was supposed to be. Just that it was basically everything that music wasn't up until that point, meaning it was somehow iconoclastic, if you like. And I think that Marquis Smith was the most iconoclastic musician of that time. My favourite track off that album is maybe Container Drivers, which you may have heard. It's a very strange song. It's very obtuse, and it has this drum break in it that just goes on far too long. And it's a very sort of it's like a sort of rockabilly song. It's quite curious, but I just love that music. And I love, I kind of also hate all punk rock in a way, because it just wasn't the fall. Like they just completely, everybody except Mark E. Smith completely misunderstood punk, in my opinion. Actually, I realise that's a very contentious statement to make, and there are other bands of that era that I like The Clash, for example. But yeah, The Fall did it for me.
Cap up by the £1,000, they sweat on their way down. They pot with customs bastards, hang around like clowns. The containers and the drivers, the containers and the drivers, the containers and the drivers.
So that's number 2. The third one, I guess, is a bit of a non sequitur. It's kind of slightly tangential, as I suppose all 3 choices would be Sister Sledge, Thinking of You, which is a record that I really loved at the time. And in the 1980s, you know, it was a funny time it was the music where I grew up with. You know, it started with Adam and the Ants, and then there was, you know, lots of stuff that I got really into, like Susie and the Banshees and Bauhaus, but then you know, the Pixies, Sonic Youth, latterly in the 80s, the Smiths, many different things. But kind of in between all that was a lot of pop music that I felt slightly embarrassed about really liking.
Everybody, let me tell you about my love brought to you by an angel from above, fully equipped with a lifetime guarantee. Once you try it, I am sure that you'll see. There's no reason to live.
After a certain point, I realised that I just really like pop music. I really like melody and songs, and I always think that Sister Sledge were great. You know, it's not their most famous song. Their most famous song is Lost in Music, which I was never really that interested in. But Thinking of You, I think, is for me their greatest record. But it's sort of in my you know, top 50 songs of the 1980s. That song is in there, along with some other kind of R&B songs that I really love as just beautiful, quite sentimental pop songs. That I really love. I remember it in my mind, for some reason, I think I had that record when my older sister went away to university, and I remember going to visit her and listening to this song, which would have been, I don't know, 1985 or something, and we sat in her little tiny apartment and listened to this record on vinyl. So I sort of remember that, and like, you know, it was a big moment when your older sister, I was just have the one sister, so it was a big moment kind of when she left home, and I missed her and everything. But so for some reason that song, it was etched in my mind, and it somehow seemed to have some significance about that.
Beautiful. Well, one of your trademarks and beautiful feature when it comes to your work is your humor, which I adore and love, and I'm always looking forward to your daily Instagram posts of the latest work, which brings joy to everybody. Who or what influenced your humor? Curious.
Well, I don't know really. I think the truth is I'm not really aware of having a sense of humor. It's not something that I've ever really been interested in, like comedy or comic books or, you know, comic humor. You know, I guess it is what I do, and somehow everything that I've done always has had a comic aspect to it ever since, you know, I was drawing as a child. But for me, I was always, you know, my influences were, you know, Dadaism and Marcel Duchamp, you know, and then maybe Andy Warhol and just the folk heroes of conceptual art, maybe. But that's my biggest influence, you know, was Dadaism, and it wasn't. I was never really been interested in comedy as such, although I do like comedy. I think it's a beautiful thing. And I always thought of my work as some kind of extension of Dadaism, you know, So I never, even though I acknowledge that what I do is kind of cartoons and it sort of functions in that way, I the truth is I don't really think my work is. I acknowledge that it's funny, but I'm not really interested in humor. For me, it's only more recently that I've decided that it's I've embraced the comedy of it in that it's something life affirming and important and special. But prior to that, I think I saw it as an attempt to be profound in some way. And comedy is just one facet of that, was one facet of that. But now I suppose, it is funny and I like comedy, but I don't really care to analyze it. It's funny just because it is funny. Does that mean I'm funny? Probably not. I'm probably not that funny. I don't really know. I don't really care. But I do like comedy. I do like to laugh. I mean, I think human beings need to laugh. It's a basic,
Definitely.
It's a need for us all. And if you can't laugh, then you've really lost something in your life. You might as well be dead if you can't laugh.
Well, just
Dead
that
people
alone
don't
kind of
laugh.
sums it up for me. But I love it. It's like this dry English humor. Yeah. It's this dry English sense of humor, which I just love. And you play with it. It's not like you're a stand-up comic, of course not. But the way you play with words, or how it sometimes just feels like kind of mid-sentence, kind of chopped off and straight to the point. It's just, in my opinion, genius. I love it.
Thank you.
Which leads me to my next question. We talked about Instagram and your daily posts. How many drawings do you do per day?
Well, it depends. Depends what you mean by drawings, I suppose. I mean, I spend a set amount of time depending on what I have to do. Sometimes you have exhibitions and obligations, so you have to do more. But I spend 8 hours a day making the work, and sometimes I make one drawing in a day, and sometimes I make 40 drawings in a day. It depends. It depends on the media, and if I'm making paintings, which tend to be a bit larger, I might make 15 in a day if I've got somebody helping me. Sometimes I have an assistant who helps me mix the paint and wash the brushes and find images of things on the iPad for me to paint. I write a list. I usually write a list of things to draw, to make pictures of. And then if I'm just making small black and white drawings, I can do quite a lot because you don't have to wash any paintbrushes or mix any paint. So I suppose the answer is quite a lot, and more than most artists would make in a day, that's for sure. But my strategy is to make a lot and then throw them away, throw a lot away. So usually there's only half of the work that gets seen by anybody. Although, as you said, Instagram's become important. So, I've realized that that's a particular gap to fill. So maybe I edit a bit less so that I've got more content to put out there.
Do you get your inspirations on a daily basis just from things you see here in the news, on the street, people chatting in the cafe? Or, like, for instance, when you choose the images on the iPad, like, what kind of makes you think of a certain image, for instance?
I don't know. Usually I'm just trying to draw something that I haven't drawn before. So,
You must have a really good memory.
Well, yeah, I don't have a very good memory because I tend to draw the same things quite a lot. But yeah, I'm always looking for things to make pictures of. I don't really collect. I don't collect ideas. The ideas happen as a result of the process of making the drawings. But generally, I just write a list. I look at, Google image search a lot of the time, or look through magazines and books and find images of things to make a picture of. I guess the good thing for me is I can never really be accused of plagiarism because the representations of the images that I see are so bad and such bad representations of what I'm trying to copy that it's probably difficult to trace the source image. But generally, I'm just trying to make pictures of everything in the world, and I feel like I hopefully will never run out of things to make pictures of. And also, a lot of the time, if you're making a painting, for example, it's, there are certain things, because I do it in such a primitive, intuitive way, and technically I'm not really particularly good at it. I'm always trying to paint things that are difficult to make pictures of, just to challenge myself. So I don't know, maybe it's difficult to paint pictures of clothing or something, or it's difficult to paint a picture of power tools or something like that, because there's too many straight lines in those things. So I like to challenge myself. It's kind of easy to make pictures of certain things like animals, and well, not all animals, but yeah, there's lots of cats and dogs and horses and elephants and stuff, but there's very few pictures of not so many I don't know, jellyfish and stuff. So I'm always looking through, finding pictures of things.
Maybe have an inspiration for tomorrow.
maybe the list hasn't started yet. So
do you find inspiration in music as well? Like, do you listen to music when you're working in the studio?
Yeah, I do. I tend to, more often than not, like the words and the pictures arrive separately. So when I'm making pictures, sometimes I usually start with words, but then the time you're making a picture sometimes the pictures are just a list of things to draw, sometimes they're statements that I have to somehow illustrate. And when I do that, I'm able to listen to music. But when I'm actually writing the words, I have to have silence. So, but generally during the day, when I'm just making pictures based on a list of things, I listen to everything, I suppose. As I said more recently, I like playlists, so I like listening to the radio on catch up. So I listen to the shows that were on the evening before on catch up. There's a station in the UK called Six Music, which is the evening shows there are quite good, and I enjoy it, and I get introduced to lots of different music. So I listen to those on catch up. But more recently, since the whole COVID-19 thing happened, I got really depressed with the news. In fact, I got depressed before that with Brexit. Brexit just started to just make me so depressed and unhappy that I stopped listening to the news. I dip into it. I look at the news once a day while I'm having my breakfast, and that's it. I don't want to hear it or see it anymore, just because it's too miserable. Yeah. So for that reason, since lockdown, I got into Spotify, because you don't have to listen to the news, because when you're listening to the radio on catch up, it's got the news every hour, which just depressed me. So if I just listen to Spotify, you listen to all the playlists and everything, and then it's great. You go down rabbit holes, and just think and remember something that you heard a while ago and think of that band, and then you find them and you're like, wow, they released 10 albums. And I'll listen to them all maybe today. So I really like that. And that I find that really enjoyable. And also somehow I'm able to listen and work at the same time. But then usually later in the day, when somehow things start to get finished, I need to have silence, which is kind of why I always listen to the evening show the day after, because in the evening I'm usually thinking about words and stuff. So I like, I need music. I've got a soundtrack to every day.
Well, that's definitely a healthy approach with the news. I concur on that one, because it affects the creative and the psyche for sure. And yeah, it's beautiful to kind of go into the rabbit hole of music and just kind of discover or rediscover music that you completely forgot about, and then it becomes the soundtrack of your daily life. Like every day is something else, depending on your mood, on the weather, on the colors, whatever it is. So definitely that music becomes a confidant in that sense. Did you rediscover or discover some artists during the lockdown that you were like, ooh, forgot about that one?
Well, yeah, probably too many to list, actually. I mean,
yeah.
I think I looked at a lot of music. I mean, you do discover things where you just go off and, you look at the list of what other people listen to and stuff. And then you find a band that you never heard of and listen to them. And sometimes you find something that's really great. But a lot of the time I look at my own iTunes, and then somehow, you find the tracks that you kind of like, but have never just listened to, never found out that much about that particular act or that band. I listened to the entire of Sparks' back catalogue. fairly recently. And Sparks are one of those bands that I didn't. It can't, I remember them, and I've got a few tracks on iTunes that appear, but I've never actually. I don't own a Sparks album, apart from like when they made that collaboration with Franz Ferdinand, who are from Glasgow, where I used to live. So I sort of quite know that those guys reasonably well, and I really loved that record that they made with them, which is called FFS, which is kind of funny if you're from Glasgow, because we have an expression which is "for fuck's sake," which is a which is a very Glaswegian expression. So I don't know if it translated to everybody else, but I thought it was a very funny name for the project.
The man without a tan came strolling into town. He had the wildest collar and the buttest scene around. The girls were all drooling as they hummed a lullaby. The men were all suspicious, but they didn't know just why. The man without a tan, he's a threat to you and me. He has the kind of hands that you might see on your TV. And if he touched your woman, how the hell could she resist? I'm sure he'd entertain her with a little bit of this.
I then bought their most recent album at that time and really enjoyed it, and then subsequently have gone back and listened to God knows how many records Sparks have released, because those guys are in there, they're probably as old as the Rolling Stones. They're probably 70 something,
Yeah.
They've made so many records, and they're so funny. They're such a funny, peculiar, but really very much a pop band as well. And you hear how their music changed, how it sounded like, it sounded like all sorts of things. Like it sounded like the Pet Shop Boys in the 1980s almost. It sounded like kind of, I don't know, ELO in the 1970s, and it's morphed, but still very much their own sound. But yeah, I mean, it's almost as if, you've discovered something that the world was well aware of, But I suppose that's what it means. You discover it for yourself.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, those things that have somehow passed you by over the years, and that was definitely one.
Yeah, that's definitely the beauty of these streaming services, that it's just such a vast catalog out there. It's like an ocean of music you can just go dive into.
Yeah.
I mean, that's I guess the beauty of it. Well, one of the records that I rediscovered during the lockdown was your records. Do you have a favorite song of your productions? I actually have the vinyl as well.
All right. I guess you need...
Was it a 7-inch?
I guess you need to clarify which one, because I've actually made quite a few over the years.
A few, yeah.
I'm about to release, I've just made 2 more records this year, all collaborations with other people. So there's a lot out there.
We did a collaboration with Franz Ferdinand and Grizzly Bear in 2006.
Oh,
right?
yeah, that one. Yeah, and there was a spoken word record before that.
Spoken word one, yeah, which I love.
Yeah, and then I made a record with Malcolm Middleton from Arab Strap, maybe 2015. And then I made I've made a few records with this guy called Ian Shaw, who's a friend of mine from Glasgow, who's kind of like a singer-songwriter. Written lyrics with him. We just did a whole album, but we've done a few singles before. And then I made this other spoken word record that's just about to get released with a guy called Regis Laurier, who's from Toulon in the south of France, and he has a band called Hi-Fi Club. They're a really interesting band. They're sort of like a collaboration band, so I think they mostly release records that are collaborations with other artists. It's a really interesting project. So I met this guy Regis in Brighton maybe a year or so ago, and he kind of, we went out and had dinner and some drinks and stuff, and he kind of railroaded me into saying, no, you've got to make this spoken word record. And I said I didn't really want to perform anymore, because I never really felt that comfortable with it. I'm not really that kind of person, even though I used to play in bands years ago. I don't know. I always feel like I want to be a producer rather than a performer. But anyway, I did it just to shut him up, basically. And we made this record, which is which is sort of interesting. I don't know how it's kind of good in spite of me being on it somehow. So anyway, that's about to come out while I'm driving.
Don't play war in the electricity substation. Don't stage mock executions. Stay away from the ski jump and the cable car and the funicular railway. Don't volunteer for the drug testing. Don't go in a hot air balloon. Don't press red buttons. Obey the stop signs. Obey the stop signs. Obey the stop sign and the no entry signs and the speed limit. Don't jump over the barriers. There is no such thing as a metal frisbee. Don't try to perform surgery on yourself. Don't stick kebab skewers up your nose. Don't join the army. Keep your hands off the gas tap and the welding equipment and the railway signal.
So there's so much out there. I guess right now my phone is kind of going zzz, because my friend Ian, whose band name is called Lord Stornoway, because he's from Stornoway in the northwest of Scotland. So David Shrigley and Lord Stornoway, we've got a record that's being played on Six Music right now, which is called Don't Worry. That's the title of the album as well as the track. So yeah, we've got a record. So that one is kind of my favorite at the moment, because it's sort of, we made the record last summer. So a year ago, more than a year ago, we made the record and we recorded it in Brighton with a friend of mine. And I wrote the words. I performed on one of the tracks, but and then Ian did wrote all the music and performed all the songs. He's got a really nice voice. And then my friend Lee kind of produced it and added some other instruments to it. So Don't Worry we called it Don't Worry just because it sort of seemed good, but now it seems like a really apt title. Don't Worry.
I was about to say, yeah,
and
how fitting.
I think that's why the track is getting played on the radio now. Yeah.
Perfect.
So anyway, right now that's my favorite. I'll send it to you.
Great.
We haven't quite.
Please.
It's sort of finished, but it's I'm not quite sure how it's going to arrive on Spotify, but it will.
It will. Well, maybe we have an Are We On Air premiere.
Yes, absolutely.
Put your stuff in the shopping trolley. At the checkout, you can pay your needs. They will be met. Your needs will be met. Read the outlandish statements made by the crazy politician. We can vote him out. We can vote him out. It's alright. It's okay. Don't worry. It's alright, it's okay. We can vote him out. Listen to the sound of the gunfire. See the tanks rolling into town. We can win the war.
Did you discover anything else in like art or music or film during the past few months that kind of caught your attention?
Well, lots of music, I guess. As I've discussed, I feel like I've got so many new things that I've been listening to. I guess because we haven't been anywhere, everything either arrives through the post or you find on the internet. So yeah, and you don't ever see anything. I got sent some books actually. I had a conversation with somebody. Last week, a friend of mine who is a photo agent. So he's sort of has an agency for photographic artists and illustrators. And we were talking about photography about this guy called Eric Kessels, who's I think a Dutch guy, lives in Amsterdam. And he's published a lot of books of photographs which are based on found archives of photographs. And he puts them all together with some other people. And he just sent me this set of books, which are really strange. I've actually just got them. Hold on a sec. I'm going to show them to you.
Yeah.
So yeah, these are all they just arrived yesterday. And so this is a book of, it's called Useful Photography. And I think it's a series of, photographs of, this one is pictures of guys' penises, And there's a guy, and it's a strange book, but there's this phenomenon on the internet where people are basically trying to demonstrate how big their penis is. So they put it by lots of household objects, and one of the things apparently is the remote control for the TV. So there's loads of pictures of penises by TV remotes. I haven't shown it to my wife yet. I don't know what she's going to think, but it's a really strange book, and it's obviously harvested from the internet somehow. But yeah, an odd one. And then there's this other.
Are you going to turn that into a piece
I don't
of
think
yourself?
it needs to be. It's already a piece. It doesn't need any more. Yeah. And then there's this other archive of this a series called In Almost Every Picture, which is a series of photo archives that he's found. And this is a picture of this this one woman who is in every picture, and she's always like either underwater or she's in the sea. She's like in a river, fully clothed with kind of nice clothes on, but she's in a fountain or whatever. And it's a really strange book, and I guess her and her partner, had some kind of erotic significance to them, where they get dressed up, and there's an explanation, a very short explanation at the back of the book as to why they did this, that presumably it's some kind of erotic thing that they enjoyed. But they've got all these photographs of this one woman, and it goes on for years as well. So like the first photograph is her, she's quite young in the sea.
Young,
in
yeah.
a swimsuit. Yeah. And this is 1980 or whatever. And then the last one is 2012 or something, where she's just, middle-aged lady.
In her
still
60s, 70s.
Still wet.
Amazing.
It's such a strange
Still
thing.
wet.
And then there's this other book, another one of this series, which is pictures of the same guy, but presumably he's with some women. He's with a woman, and all the women are like crossed out, like they've been erased from the picture, but really, really kind of crudely. So yeah, you see this little woman's there, and we're led to believe that this guy had all these photographs from previous relationships with other women, and then presumably his wife decided to really crudely erase all the pictures, but she didn't want to erase the picture of him. It's kind of funny. So,
That's amazing. It's so funny.
So that just arrived in the post from this guy called Eric Kessels, who I don't know, who's presumably somebody that is a friend of a friend. But he very generously sent me these books, which are my latest discovery. So that's great. Having not really been anywhere, not been to any museums or art galleries or bookshops really, or record shops. So I've been relying on things arriving. So that was lucky that they arrived to the post. They found me rather than I found them.
What an odd and intriguing gift in the mail. I mean, these are amazing books.
Totally. I have to find
them.
something else to send to him, I think.
Well, talking about love and erotica, let's go slightly more intimate with the music. What's your go-to falling in love or heartbreak song?
Falling in love. Well, I remember when I got married, which was 10 years ago, there was a point, we had a really nice wedding because we did it really at the last minute, and it was just a big party for our friends, and we had a party in our apartment and celebration kind of thing. So it wasn't very romantic in a way, but it was a nice thing because we shared it with all our friends. One point where we had the first dance, and then we had to have the song was going to be our song, but we didn't really, neither of us we're not very sort of decisive, and not I guess not that romantic, and then not very just not very organized. So the song that we danced to was just the song that the DJ played, and that's what so that became our song. We had no and it was Zoom by Fat Larry's band. And whenever that comes on, we say, oh, that's our song. And it's sort of, in a way, it's not really very romantic. It's just kind of stupid because we didn't choose it, or we didn't, and we don't feel any kind of sentiment. It doesn't really have a sentimental value. It's just kind of funny that it just arrived at random, you know. So that's our song, Zoom by Fat Larry's band. But you got to have a song, right? As a couple, you've got to have a song. So that's our song.
I love it.
Bang, just one touch and all the church bells ring. Heaven cold and all the angels sing. Sunrise shine in the midnight sky. Oh, soon to chase the day away. High noon, the moon and stars came out to.
With the love comes
Yeah.
the romance. What's the sexiest song?
Sexiest song? I don't know. It's. I guess I don't. Yeah, my relationship to music is not. I don't really have that relationship to music somehow. It sort of stimulates me maybe in other ways. I don't know. I guess there are sexy musicians. You know, people who make music have a certain sexiness to them. Maybe. I mean, I guess I'm different for everybody. I'm a heterosexual, so I like. I always think Cat Power was a really sexy kind of presence. You know, her music has a sort of a kind of sexual charge to it somehow, even though what she's singing about isn't very sexy. They're very dark songs, you know. But I think she's a quite a complicated person with a lot of troubles, you know, or maybe she was at one point in her life. And that really comes through in the music. But I've always found that really quite attractive and dangerous and exciting somehow. I guess you could call that a sexy thing. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of always liked her, but yeah, I'm not going to leave my wife and run away with Cat Power. I think her music's kind of sexy.
I like it. You don't have to.
Toop toop, toop toop, toop toop. After the world we all see, I get my answers from a machine. You could just put me on the line so I can get peace of mind. After the world we all see, I get my answers from a machine. You could put me on the line so I get some peace of mind.
Well, before we get to our last question, I'm curious if you ever had like a funny response by the general public or by someone to your work. Like if you ever received a letter or a phone call, or someone bumped in the street. Also, if anybody ever responded to your lost pigeon note on the tree.
Well, I don't know. I guess, you know, where would I start in answering that question? It's like almost every response to my work is from some kind of weirdo. Yeah, I design tattoos. My assistant who helps me in the studio, her job is just to protect me from all the weirdos who want to get at me, you know, ask me questions. They say your work means something to me. That's not to say all the, you know, they're all weirdos, because obviously I don't think of myself as a weirdo, and I made the work. So, I like, you know, I kind of like it when little kids really like the work, you know, like it's sort of inappropriate. So people say, oh, I'm buying this book for my son. And I'm like, how old is your son? Because this woman's like 30 or something. And I'm like, oh, he's 8. And he's really, really into your work. And I'm like, it's an 8-year-old boy. And I was sort of like, you know, there's a lot of swearing and, you know, bad words in my work, and a lot of very, very dark things that I'm not sure an 8-year-old boy is really appropriate. No, he really loves it. He loves it. Will you just sign the book to him? So, sure. And, you know, I've met some of these little kids, and they are, you know, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it really, but it's fine. You make work for people, and if they like it, that's cool. Doesn't matter if they're weirdos or 8 years old or whatever. And I like, you know, some people also, you know, I think there's a lot of people who feel that the work is, I guess the work deals with a lot of mental health issues. Like it's sort of written from the point of view of a person with mental health issues. Which I'm not really, when it's something, you know, I guess it's something you have to take seriously, but it's I think on another level that's really gratifying, you know, that people find some kind of, it gives a voice to something, or makes them feel as if there's somebody who kind of understands you know, their predicament somehow. And that's a really nice thing, you know, that you feel that the work has because there's a lot of laughter in it, but also a lot of darkness, that for some people it's quite therapeutic to look at it and to enjoy it. So that's a really nice thing, you know, and I wouldn't ever, that's got to be gratifying if you feel that your work makes people happy, or at least allows them to deal with something that needs to be dealt with. So that's that, yeah. You know, I've been making work for a long time, so there's a lot of different responses to it. And some of them are just too crazy and too weird I just couldn't even begin to tell you, you know.
I can only imagine. But it's great. Well, to wrap up our little chat, if your life would be a movie, what song would play in the end credits?
Well, people ask me, you know, sometimes people ask you that question, what music would play at your funeral? Which I suppose is a bit like the same question, isn't it? And there's this TV show to Countdown, this like, it was a quiz program that's been going for about 40 years in the UK, and it's like a word game, but it's on at weekday afternoons at about 4:00, and it started in about 1982 or something, and it's still going. And there's one part of the quiz which is called the Countdown Conundrum, and basically it's a conundrum. It's like a word that's an anagram. So you have to guess the anagram, and they have 30 seconds to guess the anagram, and they play this tune, which is really synonymous to anyone who's ever watched TV in the UK. Countdown, the theme tune. It's not, I think it is actually the theme tune to the show as well, but it's also the theme tune to the Countdown Conundrum. And it basically reaches a crescendo. It's sort of like boom. And that's how it ends. And I can imagine my coffin going into the, into the crematorium to be burnt, and that song playing. So that's my dying wish. It's not the first time I've said it either, so I'm hoping that might come to pass. Hopefully not for a while, but I think it'll be funny. It's good to make. To make people.
The movie is still going.
Yeah, good to make people laugh. Just with your final gesture, you know.
Well, like the tombstone that you made, it's just like a shopping list.
Yeah, made a few of those.
Well, David, it's been a real pleasure. It's good to see you again. I hope next time we're going to see each other, it's going to be in a library, in an art studio, in a gallery.
So I guess it was about 11 years ago last time. So I'll see you in 2031.
Another
2031. I'll be there.
For this episode's playlist, visit areweonair.com, where you'll be able to enjoy the full playlist mentioned in this conversation.